a dropout who became one of the richest people on earth. But the real story of Bill Gates isn't just about wealth or Windows. It's about a kid who saw the future and built it before anyone else. At 20 years old, he dropped out of Harvard. Most people thought he was making the biggest mistake of his life. But in less than 2 decades, that same college dropout built a $100 billion empire, one that changed the way the entire world uses technology. This is the story of Bill Gates, how he built Microsoft, what he believed, what nearly ruined him, and what you can learn from the man who turned a raw obsession into one of the most powerful companies in history. Bill Gates was born in Seattle, Washington in 1955. His father was a successful lawyer, his mother served on corporate boards. So while the family wasn't poor, Bill wasn't born into extreme wealth either. From a young age, Bill was different. He was quiet, thoughtful, but he loved to win. Whether it was chess, board games, or reading more books than anyone else in his class, he had a competitive fire that never went out. At just 13, he discovered a computer terminal at his private school.
What did your family think? Did they say there's something wrong with this young man? He wants to just do computers?
They knew I was obsessed with computers, that I would skip athletics, that I'd go in overnight, that I'd leave the house sometimes when they prefer I wouldn't go work at night on these things. And so it was kind of considered a little strange.
This was in the 1960s. Most adults hadn't even seen a computer, but Bill was hooked. He started coding, writing simple games and programs for fun. Sometimes he sneaked into the computer lab at night and stayed for hours. This obsession would become the foundation of everything that followed.
Computers, when I was young, were super expensive. And my friend Paul Allen and I actually snuck into places at the University of Washington where they had computers that weren't being used at night. And so we were fascinated by what the computer could do, but very few people were getting exposure. We had to go out of our way, and we were lucky that we did it all.
Gates wasn't just smart, he had an intensity about him, a belief that if he focused long enough, that he could outthink or outwork anyone. He once said, "I'm not a genius. I'm just passionately curious and willing to stay all up night thinking about problems no one else wants to solve." His friends remember him as intense, even a little ruthless. He'd argue non-stop, refuse to lose debates, and push himself harder than anyone else around him. He also believed in taking big, calculated risks. Even when he got into Harvard, one of the most prestigious schools in the world, he wasn't fully invested. He spent more time coding than studying. And then came the call. In 1975, Gates saw an article about a new computer, the Altair 8800. It had no software, no way to interact with it, just hardware. Gates called the company and claimed he already had a program written for it. He actually, in fact, didn't. But in a few weeks, he and his friend Paul Allen pulled together a working version. It worked. And that was the birth of Microsoft. Microprocessors plus software.
Now, my Microsoft work was when I was very young. I started when I was 17, and that was my primary focus. I was kind of maniacal. I wasn't married, no kids, I didn't believe in weekends. Until I was about 30, I didn't believe in vacations at all.
Gates then made a bold move. He dropped out of Harvard and moved to Albuquerque to build the company. He was just 20 years old. Building Microsoft wasn't easy. In the early days, Gates lived on little sleep. He'd nap under his desk, eat fast food, and spend 16 hours a day coding or managing deals. There were major setbacks. One of the biggest was software piracy. Microsoft's early product, Basic, was being copied and distributed for free. Gates was furious. He even wrote an open letter calling the pirates thieves. But it didn't stop them. Then came the IBM deal. In 1980, IBM wanted to build a personal computer. They approached Microsoft for an operating system, but Microsoft again didn't have one. So Gates made a move that would define his career. He bought an operating system, Kudos, for $50,000 from a small company and rebranded it as MS-DOS and licensed it to IBM. The keyword is licensed. Microsoft didn't sell the software, they licensed it, retaining rights to sell it to other PC makers. This is what made Gates a billionaire.
Is it fair to assume that you'll be creating products for the lookalikes, the IBM lookalikes?
Oh, absolutely. OS2 is non-exclusively licensed to IBM, and so we are licensing it to the other manufacturers.
Why did they let you, in effect, own it and they had to license it? Was that a mistake on their part?
They didn't see how big this machine would be, and their legal department didn't want to take responsibility for the source code. They had a fairly limited license. They didn't see the values being in the software. Right. They thought that the hardware was the key and software was just a sort of necessary thing. So they had realized the vision we had, which was that software over time would be way more important than hardware. They would have negotiated probably a different deal.
However, not everyone was happy. As Microsoft grew, Gates became known not just as a genius, but as a ruthless competitor. In the 1990s, Microsoft bundled its Internet Explorer browsers with Windows, effectively killing off rivals like Netscape. And the US government took notice. In 1998, Microsoft was hit with a massive antitrust lawsuit. Prosecutors argued that Gates had built a monopoly using illegal tactics to crush competition. Courtroom footage showed that different Gates, defensive, sometimes evasive. But eventually, Microsoft settled. The company wasn't broken up, but the case left a mark. Gates pressed on. Windows became the standard, Microsoft Office dominated, and Bill Gates became the richest man in the world.
When you were doing Microsoft at the beginning, you were doing the coding yourself, and you would presumably know more about coding than just about anybody. But now that you have so many other responsibilities, when Microsoft develops a new piece of software, are you able to really talk to the software engineers in the same level that you could 20 years ago?
Well, I'm certainly nowhere near as hands-on as I was when I would either write the code or look it over and hire all the programmers. And I'm able to participate, but it is a way more complex field, and I couldn't actually write all the code myself anymore.
And as Microsoft rose, another tech giant was emerging. Apple, led by the charismatic and visionary Steve Jobs. In many ways, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs couldn't have been more different. Jobs was design obsessed, charismatic, a showman. Gates? Logical, detail focused, more of an engineer than an artist. But they were on a collision course. In the early 80s, Apple invited Microsoft to write software for its new Macintosh computer. Microsoft delivered. But behind the scenes, Gates was working on something else, a graphical interface for PCs called Windows. Jobs saw it as a betrayal. He famously confronted Gates, accusing him of stealing Apple's ideas. And Gates replied with a line that became legendary. Well, Steve, I think there's more than just one way of looking at it. I think it's more like we both had this rich neighbor named Xerox, and I broke into his house to steal the TV set and found out that you already had stolen it. The feud went public. For decades they were rivals, battling over market share, innovation and influence. But despite the tension, there was mutual respect. Jobs once called Gates more comfortable with business than any tech person I've met. And when Steve Jobs was dying in 2011, Bill Gates visited him at his home. He later said, "We'd grown up together, we'd push each other, there was no one else like him." In 2000, Gates stepped down as the Microsoft CEO. He shifted his focus to something else, giving his fortune away.
We love Bill!
So you're the wealthiest man in the world for 20 years or more. How does it affect your life daily? People come up to you all the time and ask for money, or they expect you to buy them things.
Fortunately, people know that wealth is dedicated to the foundation. And so if they have ideas that are in the foundation's area, infectious disease, improving education, then it's super interesting.
He and his wife Melinda launched the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, one of the largest charities in the world. They've donated over $80 billion to global health, education and poverty. Today, Gates lives in a 66,000 square foot mansion near Seattle. He collects rare books, plays bridge with Warren Buffett, and is often seen promoting climate tech, vaccines and AI ethics. His journey wasn't luck. It was mindset, focus and the courage to take risks when no one else believed in his vision. Whether you admire or criticize him, one thing is clear. Bill Gates didn't just build software. He built an empire with code, conviction and relentless drive. If you found this story inspiring, make sure to subscribe for more real stories of ambition and success.